And welcome to the Go Earn It podcast. It is episode number 11. I'm really fired up for this one. Mark Ironside joins us, four-time Big Ten champion, four-time All-American, two-time national champion, Hodge Trophy winner. Mark, this is going to be fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great tonight. I'm doing really good, Shane. Thanks for having me on.
So
You're
this
always
is
a
how
ball
this
of fire.
is going to go, Mark. I'm going to come at you. I'm going to go Iowa style. I'm going to go Mark Ironside on Mark Ironside. I might come underhook right side. I might come underhook left side. I might drop below the knee with a single. I might go high crotch. I might go over under. But you know I'm going to be taking territory, and I'm going to come at you from all different ways. And it's going to start, a good hard hand fight as always. My first question, Mark, just very simply, what is your first wrestling memory?
Well, you go all the way back to my first wrestling match, I guess. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is, I didn't get started wrestling until I was in 5th grade. And the only reason I even knew about wrestling or got involved in wrestling is because I had an older brother that was in 7th grade at the time. And he didn't know anything about wrestling until it was offered at Wilson Middle School. And so he went out for it in junior high or whatever, Wilson Junior High. And then he'd come home at nighttime and practice moves on me in our basement. And that's how I got involved in wrestling. And I was in 5th, he was in 7th. He was 2 years older than me. And then I thought, hey, I'd go to some of his matches. I learned kind of what wrestling is about, but I didn't know anything about it really. I didn't belong to a club. I didn't do anything. But anyway, I got into a kids tournament at Linn-Mar High School in Cedar Rapids, just a little round robin kids tournament. And my first match out, I didn't have a singlet. I didn't have shoes. I didn't know nothing, just shorts and a t-shirt, but I thought I was, going to do good or whatever. And the very first match of my entire career, guess who I wrestled? A guy by the name of Jeff McGinnis.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And he had been wrestling since, he's kindergarten. We're in 5th grade. Before I knew it, the match was over. I was technical fall. I didn't even know what a tech fall was. The referee just stopped the match. He didn't pin me, he just teched me. And that was my rude awakening into the sport of wrestling. And then I think I lost the next match as well too. So I went 0-2, and the next match was close. It was like a 4-2 match or something, But I remember driving home that day from Linn-Mar, and I was on Blair's Ferry Road in Cedar Rapids with my mom, and I can't believe I can remember this all the way back to 5th grade. And I was in the backseat of the car, I was crying, and I was pissed just from, that's what I would do when I get mad. You just cry out of just pure frustration, and just told Mom I never want to wrestle again. I don't want to wrestle again. And then I don't know, it was a little while later, probably a month later, maybe not even a month, 2-3 weeks later, another little round robin tournament came up in Cedar Rapids Kennedy High School. And I won that tournament. How, I don't know, but it was just a little 4-man bracket. I won the tournament, and I remember standing there early in the morning on the top block and holding that bracket and getting that ribbon. And that, just the feeling of that, standing on that block with that little Daybreak Optimist, wall bracket in my hand, and it was just an amazing feeling. And from there on out, I was hooked on wrestling. I was literally hooked, and I still didn't do any wrestling. I never went to a club. I didn't go to the YMCA. I didn't do anything until I got into 7th grade, until it was offered in junior high, just like my brother did. And from there, that was the first opportunity I had to really get coached or do anything. So technically, really, I didn't really have any coaching or start wrestling until like 7th grade.
Who was your high school coach?
Dick Briggs.
What kind of impact did he have on you? When you think about your time in high school wrestling for him, how would you describe the impact that he had on you?
Well, Briggs had a lot of history in his family. His brother Don Briggs was at the longtime coach at Northern Iowa, UNI, for years. So there was a lot of history there between the Briggses, in the sport of wrestling, especially being up at Cedar Rapids Jefferson. Briggs was a very technical coach. He was more of and that's not how I was. I was not technical at all. And there was times in high school where, Coach Briggs, who and I are great friends now to this day, but there was times that we butted heads in high school because it was just drill, technique. And I was just more so, I just want to wrestle. Let's just freaking wrestle already. I remember a day that my brother, again, he was 2 years older than me. He was a senior and I was a sophomore, and it was just like, oh my gosh, you're sitting around in the circle, and watching technique and whatever. And the room was kind of cold. We didn't have like a really good heated room or nothing. And Matt came over and he kind of like grabbed me by my shirt and said, "Hey, let's go wrestle." So I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, let's just go wrestle." So we went to the other end of the room, like the whole rest of the team, and we just started wrestling ourselves. And it's just kind of like how we were. We just wanted to scrap and we just wanted to wrestle. And I hated to learn to slow things down and to learn technique and stuff. I just wanted to scrap until I got to college. And then once I got to college, I really learned the importance of learning wrestling and how important it was to break things down and how important drilling was, and not just going through the motions, but actually thinking about where your head's at, where your ears at, where your elbows at, where your hands at, and using drilling for the purpose of getting better, but also for warming up and just having drilling with a purpose. And so I learned a lot of that when I got into college, and it became fun. And that's how. And then when I got into college, and you got Coach Gable and so many different people and stuff, it just really became fun to learn and kind of broaden my horizons. And that's not to take anything away from Coach Bridge, because he taught us a lot in high school as well did all the other coaches that I had in high school. But I've always been very, very blessed. My high school career with amazing coaches and teammates. We had a great team. We never won a state title, but we're always second, third. We were right there every year. And then obviously I get to college, I'm blessed with great coaches and great teammates. And that's one thing I attribute a lot of my success to, is just being around great coaches and being very fortunate. And then also having great teammates as role models and workout partners. And there's just a lot to be said for that. I mean, I can take a lot of the credit myself, but without the upbringing I had from my parents, the competitiveness that I had with my brother, us competing against each other and everything under the moon, and then the coaches and teammates I had, I wouldn't have been half the wrestler that I was.
Were you a college wrestling fan, Mark, at what point?
Well, I mean, when you grow up 25 miles from Iowa City, you can't help but be a college wrestling fan, and an Iowa wrestling fan at that. Back in the day, we didn't get to watch Shane Sparks on the Big Ten Network. I mean, it was on Iowa
listen to
Public
Mark,
Television.
listen to Ironside and Grace, right?
Yeah. It was Tim Johnson,
and
Doug Brown and those guys on Iowa Public Television. And what my brother and I would do is we would VHS record every match that we could. And when I was growing up in high school, Tom and Terry were wrestling in college, and those were like our role models. Those were our idols. That's who we wanted to be. Was like Mark and Matt Ironside wanted to be Tom and Terry Brands, but with our own kind of salt and flavor on our own wrestling. But that's kind of the overall mindset that we had. So it was just an awesome opportunity for us to be able to go down to Iowa City, being so close, and watch them in person every chance that we had. But we would go back and we'd watch the recordings, and then we would watch their matches over and over, and we would watch them in slow motion. We would pause things. We'd look at where their body was and where they were in position at every single time, and watch how they did things in slow motion. And we literally wore those VHS tapes out. And that's where we probably honestly learned the majority of our wrestling, was from watching those matches on VHS and recording them. And not just them too, but you also had Chad Zapperl in there, and the Steiners,
my favorite guy ever,
Ryan, and John Osendorf, and Mark Ryland, and Bart Chelsvig, and it just Travis Pfizer. And there's just so many amazing teams. But to be able to go watch them in person, I mean, I was recruited to a lot of different places, but I never gave anybody a chance. It was Iowa or to the factory in Cedar Rapids. It was just Iowa or bust.
Do you remember your first time going to Carver Hawkeye?
I do. My dad actually took my whole family, my mom and my sister, my two brothers, down there for an Oklahoma State dual meet one night. It was freezing cold. It was a super, super snowy night. It was a packed house. Ray Brenzer wrestled Mark Ryland. That was a fun match, and Ryland, pinned him or whatever. But it was Joe C. was the coach at the time, and it was just a great rivalry. And it was something that it pretty much set the stone for me that's where I not only wanted to go, but that's where I needed to go. That was kind of my mindset. That was my philosophy. If I was going to be successful, and I knew that I had a long ways to go to be good at that next collegiate level, that's where I really needed to be. And so that's what pretty much stamped it for me that I needed to be an Iowa Hawkeye.
We just did that match last night, Minnesota, Iowa. Ben Keeter made his Iowa debut. And I was thinking to myself, like, what a feeling it's got to be. He's another guy, local kid, gets wrestled at Iowa Black Singlet. What do you remember, Mark, from that first time you wrestled in Carver Hawkeye? What stands out all these years later?
Well, Ben Keeter and I actually kind of had a little bit in common last night, is that the fact that they were wrestling Minnesota, and that was his first match in Carver Hawkeye Arena. I wrestled Minnesota for first wrestling match in Carver Hawkeye Arena. I was wrestling a guy by the name of Tim Harris, and I got beat in that match. It was a close match. He was a senior. I was a freshman, and I got beat in that match. It was a close match, but I remember how dry the air was in Carver Hawkeye Arena. My lungs were just burning, and it was just like I'll just never forget that feeling. And I could see, Ben last night too. He was tired, but he kept moving his feet when he needed to and stuff. But a lot of nerves, obviously, and stuff. And some similarities there last night when I saw Ben wrestle. And I think a lot of it was nerves for him as well too. And you're going to see a whole different Ben Keeter as time goes on, and you see him moving his feet a lot more and a lot more offensive, attacks and so forth or whatever. But yeah, I remember it just sucked losing. It's the only bad thing, luckily for Ben, there's not a similarity. He won, I didn't. And the funny thing was Tim Harris from Minnesota that year got beat out by Jason Davids. I don't remember if you remember Jason Davids that wrestled for Minnesota. And so Jason Davids beat him out and wrestled at the Big Tens of the Nationals. And then I actually ended up wrestling Jason Davids at the national tournament, which was in Iowa City that year. And I beat Jason Davids at the national tournament to become an All-American. So I got a little bit of revenge on Minnesota anyway, just not against Tim Harris.
What's your first memory of meeting Dan Gable?
My recruiting trip. I didn't, I mean, I knew who Dan Gable was, obviously, and seen him in person from up in the stands. And but even though I lived close, I was never down in the Iowa wrestling room. The first time I honestly met him in person was on our recruiting trip, just like Joe Williams was, and Jeff McGinnis was, and Adam Greiner at the time was. And we had a great recruiting class, and we did, obviously, McGinnis and Williams, and I did really well there. But the thing about Gable is he's just so soft-spoken. He's not like you get him riled up and he gets ornery, there's no doubt. And that's what, made him a heck of a coach, but just really soft-spoken, true and genuine. And I remember when he came to my house the morning to sign the papers, him and Coach Jim Zaleski to recruit me as well too. And to seal the deal or whatever too. It was a morning that we did a lot of trapping back then, and I remember him coming into the garage and just kind of being in awe. That morning we had some fox that morning, a lot of raccoons and some different animals in there, and he just couldn't believe it. And he's a different character, and you got to learn to know Gable to kind of understand him. But no matter how much you're around him and how much you're with him, he still always keeps you on edge. You never really know what that man is thinking. And that's what made him good, is nobody ever really, truly kind of pegged him, So Gable is just amazing. He was an amazing coach for so many different reasons, but he did a really good job of walking that fine line of being your best friend, someone coming who didn't have anybody but daughters, meaning Coach Gable, 4 daughters, and he didn't have no boys. So he treated us like his own sons. But at the same time, he needed to keep, the respect that he had as a coach, and he needed to keep it to where we were going to go out there and we were going to fight for him, and we never got complacent or anything like that. And he was pretty amazing at that.
What's the most impactful conversation you ever had with him? And maybe it wasn't even about wrestling.
I don't remember an impactful, the most impactful. We've had so many conversations over the years. Like so many, when I was at Iowa, probably way more honestly, once I've graduated than when I was, competing. I just remember specific things that he would say that would kind of get to me. And, as far as a mental standpoint of things, everybody wants to talk about the Kerry Colott match, where Gable played his mind games, and Gable he was so good at working people's minds. And, and here I am wrestling Kerry Colott, a phenom. He just, everybody knows Kerry Colott and how good he is. And I got him coming up for the All-Star meet in Iowa City. And we never talked about the match. We never prepared for the match. It was never brought up until he was the next person on the calendar. But that entire week, we started working on a lot of things, especially defending front headlocks, because that's where Kerry was so amazing at. But as that week started, he'd be like, okay, when you beat Colott, here's how you're going to beat him. Here's how you're going to beat Colott. It was never like, hey, if you want to beat Colott, or if you're going to beat Colott, this is what you got to do. Every word out of his mouth was, when you beat Colott, here's how you're going to do it. It's like he was already instilling in my mind that I was going to beat him. And I'll be honest with you, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to beat this guy. It's freaking Kerry Colott. I'm going to go out there and give it everything I got. But in reality, I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. By the end of the week and before the time it came match time, I honestly 100% believed I was going to beat him. I just did. My brother came in from Iowa Central Junior College, where he was training to and wrestling, to come to the meet that day. And I remember going up to the room and getting a little workout with him, like probably 11 o'clock or something in the morning, the day of the meet. And I remember walking down to the equipment room and the cage down there and exchanging our rolls and stuff, our workout gear. And I walked Matt out of the tunnel, and the mat was set up in the middle of the arena. And there was nobody in there, obviously, at whatever time. And I remember, like, it was kind of cool to me to be able to have Matt with me. And, he's probably my biggest training partner throughout my entire life. And we walked out in the middle of the mat and just walked around in a circle, kind of out there, just looking around. And I remember telling Matt right then and there that this is where I'm going to beat Kerry Colott tonight. I'm going to beat Kerry Colott right here, and it's going to be like World War III. And I just knew that I really believed I was gonna. And, luckily for me, that's what happened. But I just had a feeling, and I credit Coach Gable for that, from how he started working with me and preparing me, not just from a technical standpoint, but also a mentality standpoint early on in the week.
You and Kerry ever talk about that match?
At the Olympic trials that year, 96, he came up to me out in Spokane, Washington, and I'd never spoken to him. I'd never talked to him or anything like that. We didn't talk at like nationals or anything that year, because he won the national title that year, beating Steve St. John in the finals, who I got beat by in the semifinals in overtime. And I know he wanted that rematch. He wanted that rematch, I'm sure, really bad. But he came up to me at the trials in Spokane, and he was competing there, and I was just there as a training partner for Tom and Terry. And he just said something along the lines of like, hey, that was a good match, and I really underestimated you, and I wasn't ready for you. I didn't expect that, So he had a lot of respect for me, and obviously I have a ton of respect for him then, now as a coach as well too. But one of the most fierce competitors that you'll ever see in your entire life, and out of anybody that you could ever think of, getting kind of like hosed through wrestling and the higher ranks and money and everything else, all the corrupt business that went on with it. There's been nobody with the more unfortunate story than Kerry Colott. And matters of fact, when the film came out on Colott, I made my daughters watch it, because if anybody's ever going to go through controversy and be able to rise above, this is the guy here. This, you'll never go through as much as what this guy here went through. So anytime you want to feel sorry for yourself and cry for yourself, watch this right here, and then whatever you're going through won't be nothing compared to what that is. So I have so much respect for him as a competitor and an athlete, and then now as a coach.
When you got to Iowa City, Mark, and you look back maybe your entire career, who's the most impactful teammate you ever had? I'm giving you one. What teammate impacted you the most?
Wow,
I told you I'm coming hard under. That's
a toughie, because there are so many that impacted you in so many different ways. I was roommates with Joe Williams when we were on the road. Not like roommates that we lived in, but roommates when we were on the road a lot. And the reason I liked being with Joe a lot is because he won a lot. He was always in the finals. I wanted to be roommates with someone that I knew was going to be competing to the end of the tournament.
Did you pick him as a roommate, or how did that work out?
We just kind of picked each other. I think it was never like, hey, you want to be my roommate, or I'll be your roommate, or anything. It was just kind of like, and then from there on out, it's just like the coaches knew that at that time that we were just going to be roommates, So every time you show up to hotels, it'd be Ironside, Williams, here you go, here's your keys, type of thing, So I just really enjoyed hanging with Joe in the rooms, and he was so we're different, I mean, he's so quiet and relaxed and laid back, and I'm more, kind of revved up and just
Call
kind
the fall! Call
yeah.
the fall!
Yeah. So it was a good balance for me where it offset me a little bit, and I liked that. And I felt like I needed that. And I think he probably also needed a little bit of me. And there's times that I would call him out too on his matches, like, Joe, like, you've got all the talent and ability. Like, oh my God, I'd do anything to have what you have. Why do you only win by a couple of points here and there? Why was that match so close? And I think he appreciated that too. And I can help kind of push him a little bit. So we just kind of helped push each other, and we really made each other balance out really well. So, but I really enjoyed so many of my teammates, going all the way back to when I was a freshman. Even a guy like Matt Needham, and who was kind of quiet, and Daryl Weber, and Mike Mena. Oh my goodness, Mike Mena was awesome. So there's so many good teammates. Hard to say one, but I'd probably go with Joe just because we were roommates on the road a lot.
Give me a good Dan Gable, Tom Brands coaching story, either or. Like, give me from the corner. Give me a story that stands out from those guys in the corner during one of your matches.
Well, the one that stands out probably the most is probably my least proud moment of being an athlete, and that was when I believe I was a junior, and I was wrestling Jeff Booker of Ohio State in the quarterfinals, I believe, or it might have even just been second round, actually. Can't remember. But Jeff Booker wrestled for Ohio State. I just wrestled him in the Big Ten finals the week before, or like 2 weeks before, a week and a half before, whatever. And I beat him by 14 points. I missed the tech by a point, and I was pretty upset about that. That was in the finals of the Big Tens, and then I had him at nationals right away, and I got out to a quick like 6-2 lead or something like that. I don't remember what it was in the first period, and that's why you always want to build your leads. You don't just go out and get a takedown and just try cruising or whatever, because things happen. Things happen, and what happened in this match was I was out to a 6-2 lead, I believe. I'm in on another shot. It's a scramble, roly-poly. Like right now, they'd probably call it a neutral position, but there was never any control. I was like a dog on the bone on this leg, and the referee had called 2 takedown and 2 near fall. I didn't even know he got to takedown and then he was calling near fall. I had no idea. I didn't hear 2 and then 1, 2. I'm scrambling around. I come up and we face each other thinking like, hey, that was just a great scramble. I came out of it or whatever. And all of a sudden the score's tied like 6-6 or 7-6, got an escape. I'm like, what are you talking about? There was never control there. So then I get right back in another shot again. I'm trying to get around behind. He's got my ankle behind me. And then I do something really dumb that you're never supposed to do. I turn towards the head because I'm just mad and I'm frustrated and I'm pissed. And then I turn towards the head, and then he ends up taking me down. So now he's in the lead. And then I don't know why, but he's the one that took an injury time just because he was tired. And it was getting later in the match, and he was ahead by a point. So I go walking over the corner while he takes a breather, and Gable literally just smacks me right across the face. It's like, you wake up right now. Like, you wake up. You snap out of this. Like, because I was literally just seeing like rage, because of the situation or whatever. And Gable, that's the only time that I know like he would really have to smack me and like really get on me and kind of put the whip to me or whatever. But it worked because then I got the escape and got another takedown and ended up winning the match or whatever. But that's the thing that I remember most about Gable, is just really just coming over the corner and just like, he didn't just like, I mean, he wham, like hit me hard. And that time he was hitting Joe, he was hitting Whitmer, he had his hands taped with tape, and he cracked me, and I'm like, whoa. I mean, it really caught me off guard and kind of by surprise, and got me back focused on track.
You didn't lose often, Mark. How did you learn to deal with a loss? Because it didn't happen a lot.
I'll tell you a story about losing, and I hate losing. There's honestly, there's probably nobody on the face of this earth that hates to lose more than me, other than maybe Tom Brands. Maybe Tom. And that goes for anything. I mean, you name it. I mean, if it's Uno, geez, just the other week, I freaking throw my Uno cards with all my kids and their friends at the house because I'm pissed about Uno. Or last year, the Big Tens, I think it was, or Nationals or something. Terry Brands and I got in a big old argument about Uno and everything. I took all the cards, we were by the pool, and I just chucked them in the pool. You know what? And it's something I have a really difficult time. I play Wordle now, and I'm competitive at it. I don't go get that, and I get so stinking mad. But Tom Brands told me something that stuck with me the whole rest of my career. When I lost in Carver Hawkeye Arena my freshman year during nationals, I lost to Dwayne Zinkin for 5th place from Fresno State at the time. And I was like, raging mad. And I remember coming off that mat and Tom grabbing me and telling me, you do it where nobody can see you do it. You go up to the restroom room, you do whatever you want to do up in the restroom. You throw weights around, you go in the sauna, you do whatever you want to do. You just beat things up, but you don't let anybody see you do it. And that helped me a lot with not just the sport of wrestling, but other things, is just where you just try to keep it cool, and then you can kind of go behind closed doors and let out whatever you need to get let out or whatever. And I think there's a lot of truth that stands behind that, and you don't let them see. And then that carried over too, because when I lost the next year in the semifinals to Steve St. John in overtime, I remember I grabbed my stuff from Tom, who was in my corner, and I just sprinted off the mat as fast as I possibly could and just got away and got behind the curtain, and then I let it go back there, and just never want to make anything, especially these days now where everybody's got cameras and cell phones and everybody, and they can record everything, but you just get away from people and you just do it by yourself in a way. And that's probably the biggest lesson I learned, to learn how to deal with defeat, and it's still not easy.
What loss hurt the most in your career? Just hurt the most?
For sure, the overtime loss, my semifinals, my sophomore year, to Steve St. John. That one crushed me. That one hurt bad. Just the way that the match went, the way that I lost. I never beat him in my career. He just kind of outslicked me every time that I wrestled him. He played the edge. He played the rules at the time. If the rules were still like they are, if the rules were like then, like they are now, I win that match easily, hands down. I don't know how many times he fleed the mat. He went out of bounds. Hell, he would have been stalled out of the match. He come over the top and just grab and hold the head. That's illegal now too. And there's just so many things that allowed people to, stall basically back then that doesn't happen now, which is great for the sport. But that one stung, and I remember. I never lost in college after that again. And I remember when I got back from the nationals, and the Daily Iowan, which is basically like an Iowa City newspaper, had a picture. I don't know why, but they had a picture of me in the paper with me getting beat and running off the mat and just rage. And I remember that. And I somehow went and found that photo from whoever took the photo. They put the photo credit under the paper, and I framed it and I put it in I was living in a trailer at the time, in a trailer park, and I hung it up in my bedroom. And I looked at that for the next 2 years. I never took it down until I was done competing in college. And that's what kind of drove me. And it just mentally, that's what really kind of turned me around. And I just would not allow myself to lose ever again after that match.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you another thing. After I got beat in the semifinals in that match, we still had to go, and we made weight the night before, and I had to go make my weight. And thankful for Royce Alger was with me and make sure I kept my cool and didn't get in any fights or anything like that. And he had to do the same thing after that Bucher match my junior year, when I went behind the curtain then too. But I credit Tom Brands a lot, because the next morning after I got beat in the semifinals, I wanted to be in the finals that day, and I had to go back and wrestle back for third that next morning. I did not want to be there. That was probably the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life, as far as overcoming something mentally. Whereas I came there for a national title. I came there for another match against Kerry Colott in the finals up on the stage. And anything less, I did not care. And I didn't want to be there. And I wasn't going to warm up. I didn't care if I got beat, I got beat. I wasn't going to warm up, nothing. Tom went and found some warm-up clothes from somebody, some workout clothes, some workout gear. And he made me warm up with him and drill hard and get a sweat going and get going and get my heart rate up. And had he not done that, I mean, I had to wrestle 2 stud guys to come back. I had to wrestle Steven Schmidt, who I wrestled the next year in the national finals.
Yep.
And I also had to wrestle Anthony Periano from Northwestern, who beat me once in my career earlier as well too, and who was a senior at the time as well too. So had Tom not done that for me, I mean, I would have wrestled. I wasn't going to just throw the towel in and not wrestle. When I say I didn't want to be there, I was going to be there and I was going to wrestle and I showed up, but I wasn't mentally or physically ready to take the mat against those type of opponents. And to be able to come back and get third in that mental and mind state, I almost take more congratulatory pats on the back for something like that than I do winning the 2 national titles that I won. Because those were expected of me. I was winning those national titles. I was not expecting to get third. And that was, to me, way harder than winning those 2 national titles.
Name of the podcast is the Go Earn It Podcast. And you were the #1 seed that year, by the way, as you well know, when you lost to St. John. Similar as a sophomore in high school, you take third. People always talk about getting the next best thing, representing yourself, representing your school, representing your last name, which is probably the most important thing that you have. The value of taking third place. I mean, it's incredible to come back and get the next best thing when you don't really have any interest. It's pretty incredible.
That's what I was, I said earlier, I've been lucky my whole career to have good training partners and good workout partners, teammates, coaches. I just told you the story about Tom, but going back to my sophomore year, you bring that one up too. I lose to Derek Monsier my sophomore year at the state high school wrestling tournament. He's ranked #1. He was defending state champion. He goes on to Iowa State, becomes an All-American Iowa State, great wrestler. And I lose by a takedown at the end of that match. I didn't want to compete that next day either there. But thankfully, my brother Matt, who had lost in like double overtime the previous year and just kind of threw the towel in and didn't go out and compete very well that previous year. And he ended up coming back. I think he got 5th at state. He's the one I remember in the hotel room and that morning before he went over to compete and to wrestle back. He told me, like, don't do what I did. You be ready to go today and you come back and get third, because looking back now, that's going to really help you out later on. And I wish I would have come back and get third. So if it wasn't for Matt to step up and be a big brother and tell me, kind of what he went through and tell me that he's not going to allow me to be a sourpuss like what he was and do what he did. And then to have a coach like Tom Brands to step up, those are 2 things right there that I'm telling you about. I wouldn't have been the wrestler that I was if those people wouldn't have been around me that kind of guided me and taught me that, hey, you still got to come back. There's still wrestling to be done. And the job's not done until it's done. And I really credit those guys a lot for stuff like that.
What is true commitment to you, Mark? You've done this at the highest level. You are one of the all-time greats. We're old now, so I can call you a legend. You are a legend of the sport at the University of Iowa. Everybody wants it. I mean, quite frankly, when I hear kids talking about wanting to be 4-time national champs, my own opinion, like, just save it. It's really hard. You can't go to Hy-Vee, down to the coffee aisle and go get a national title. You got to earn it. And I love this saying, the rent's due every day. When you want to be up top, it's due every single day. What is true commitment to Mark Ironside?
Well, I think the biggest thing is like what you said. Everybody wants it. I mean, who doesn't want it? Who would ever say that they don't want to be a 4-time state champion or national champion or just even be a one-timer or whatever their goals may be? But the biggest thing is you have to have the passion for something. You have to have the passion for it before you can have the commitment for it. Because if you don't have the passion for it and the drive for it, and and when I say passion, I mean like it lives inside of you. Like that's what you That's what you live for. That's what you do. That's what you were put on this earth to do, like right now, at this particular point in time in your life. And that's kind of how it was for me what it was for wrestling for me when, when I was younger and I played baseball like nobody's business. I loved the game of baseball, and I would play in 2-3 leagues at a time and play up, 2 levels and stuff. I love the sport of baseball. But once I got involved in wrestling, I started realizing that things were, I was in my own control of my own destiny. I didn't have to worry about the guy in front of me going up to bat and striking out with the bases loaded, and he's a third out, and here I am standing on the, the on deck circle, and I can't do nothing. I can't do anything about the second baseman letting a ball go through his legs and making an error and then 2 runs score and we lose the game type of thing, And that's what I loved about the sport of wrestling is I could either train myself to be an average Joe, or I could train myself to be as good as a wrestler as that God, created me to be. And that's what I had the passion for. And that's what I had the passion to do. And I, when I was in high school, I didn't, I don't want to say I didn't have a lot of friends. I had a lot of good friends, but I didn't like go party and I didn't go drink. I've never drank. To this day, I don't drink. I never have. I just, my high school coach at the time, Dan Connor, asked me if while I'm under his watch, he just saw something in me. He says, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't get caught up in that. You get to college, you're on your own, but under my watch, please don't do it. And I promised him. And then I get to college. Well, Tom and Terry Brands have never drank. They're my biggest idols. Why would I drink? But I just, when I was in high school, I never went and partied. I never went and did stuff like that. I was either wrestling the entire summer, going to camps, or fishing. And I just kind of did my own thing. And then when I got to college, it was pretty much the same thing. And, I just, my main focus and my only focus was on wrestling. And I remember thinking, like, I would read like hunting magazines and stuff on bus rides and stuff, because I couldn't do it like I wanted to do it. You get some time over Christmas break, you go out and get your fix in or whatever. But I remember thinking like, there'll be a day that I'm going to focus solely on hunting. But right now, that just isn't particularly my focus right now at this point in time in my life. And so going back to it, the commitment thing, you got to have the passion for it first. You got to know that that is what you want, and it's got to be within you. It's got to be in your blood. You got to just, that's, you don't care about anything. That's what you want. And that goes for all realms. It goes for your learning the technique. It goes for your conditioning factor. It goes for your weight control, your nutrition. It goes for your social life. It goes for your academics, and it goes for balancing all that out. And then taking it to another level, then you talk about being committed or dedicated and going above and beyond, finding small little things that, might take you to that next level, and going in at like 3 a.m. in the morning and doing a stair workout, or, not that much more conditioning is going to help you, but, physically, but mentally, doing what other people, aren't doing when you're doing something when they're sleeping, and carrying their heavyweight up and down the stairs, and just, there's so many things that you just do because you're committed and you got so much drive and you want it, and it's just a matter of how bad do you want it, as they say. And I was probably committed more than most at that particular time, but I needed to be too, because I didn't have the Joe Williams talent and ability to work with. So I had to make up for it in other areas, and that's what I tried to do.
What's your most memorable dual meet as a member of the team in your career? What's a dual meet that you'll always remember?
One of the really cool dual meets, actually, there's so many of them. There's 2 of them. One of them was when we beat Oklahoma. No, we didn't beat Oklahoma State. We got beat by Oklahoma State on Valentine's Day at Cover Hawkeye Arena, because that's when McGinnis got beat by Steve St. John, or not Steve St. John, Steven Schmidt. That was on Valentine's, but that was like a sold out Cover Hawkeye Arena on Valentine's Day. It was a really big dual meet, but we lost that one at the very end. It came down to heavyweight. But it was just, even though we lost it, it's just the excitement in that arena. Doug Schwab stalled out Eric Guerrero. Eric Juergens trying to think of who he beat from Okie State. Or no, was it Jesse Whitmer that beat Teague Moore? Or no, Teague Moore beat Jesse Whitmer, but I beat Jamal Kelly that year, and it was Joe Williams and Hardell Moore, and it just so many great matches and stuff. But the one that the best dual meet, the biggest dual meet, I think, was the very first dual meet ever in the history, first event ever in the history of Bryce Jordan Arena when we wrestled Penn State. We went into there, and it came down to the wire there, and we won that one as well too. But it's just a cool, because it was the first event to ever be held in Bryce Jordan Arena, and it was a wrestling meet, and it was sold out at that time too. So it was just really, really cool. But there's so many great, amazing dual meets over the years, especially back then when the national duels were really contested. Man, Iowa and Okie State had some barn burners of duels back there in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I'm trying to think of the name of the old, it's not the Devaney Center now, which is now, but it used to be an old building back in there. Man, there was and it was really tight quarters and stuff. You didn't have anywhere to go, and the benches were right next to each other, and the coaches are going at it. There's a lot of heated moments during those rivalries.
What's the most ticked off you've ever seen Gable?
Probably for sure, 100%. I mean, hands down, is at the Big Tens, my junior year up in Minneapolis at Williams Arena, and Mike Euchre was wrestling Zach Taylor, and this is after Gable had his hip surgery and he was on crutches, so he wasn't actually in the corner coaching. He was over in our camp area, and just kind of watching from a distance. And this was probably, I want to say, second round or something like that, quarters probably. And Keith Poolman was the referee at the time. He was a great referee out of Charles City. And Zach Taylor and Mike Euchre were both, Greco guys. And they were it was just an amazing, amazing match. I remember I was sitting up in the stands with my family, my parents and my grandparents and stuff, and watching this match. And Euchre got a couple calls that were questionable against him for Taylor. Now remember, Taylor wrestled for Minnesota. We're wrestling in Minnesota. And I think that had a little bit to do with it there. But Gable got up from the other side of the arena and started walking over there. And he wasn't obviously in the corner. And he goes all the way over there on his crutches. He's just going over there on his crutches and going over there on his crutches. And he just starts pounding his crutches on the arena. And he points at that crutch at Pullman and says, "Get over here. Get over here." And he called him over, and he just lit him up. Like, he was just, I've never seen Gable as upset as he was during that particular thing. And Euchre ended up winning the match. It was just an amazing match, but the whole crowd got into it. Though, as Gable was marching over there, everybody seen him coming, and the crowd just started going nuts. And at that time too, our Iowa fan base was more than half of the entire Big Ten, more than half of the arena. And so it was just a really cool moment, and it really fired Mike Euchre up as well too.
When you think about winning those 2 national titles, Mark, where does your mind go?
You're not going to like the answer. You're not going to like the answer, Shane. We talked a little bit about this before we went on air. I don't know. I just don't ever think about them. I just don't ever think about national titles and winning, and it just didn't even happen almost. I mean, I did it, but the thing is I did it, and I expected myself to do it. And I've told people this before, but I'm not one to just after you win, just never ever point the number one fingers ever. Even when you win it and you're number one, I just never point the number one fingers, and just I go and jump in the coach's arms and just do crazy stuff. And when I would win, it was just more of a satisfying moment. It was kind of inside I was very, very happy, but just satisfied, and just you know what, I did it, and it was done, and that's cool, and it's just awesome. But I don't know if anybody says talks about the national title matches, honestly, and this is where you're not gonna like the answer. You know what I think about? I think about when I wrestled Steven Schmidt my junior year, and I had over 4 minutes of riding time, and I win that match by 6 points. Why would I ride someone for over 4 minutes? They only get a point for 1 minute. Why wasn't I going on the feet more and doing what I do and cutting him, letting him go, and cutting him, letting him go, and breaking this open and getting a major decision. You know, I win that match 10-4. And then I go and wrestle Sean Enright the next year in Ohio, and he's from Ohio. And I win that one 9-3, and I had over 3 minutes riding time. Like, why was I so just boring during those matches? Because it's the national finals? You know, open it up, let it go, get your major, wrestle how you wrestled before you got there. You're telling me I couldn't gotten one more takedown in those extra minutes? I was getting all that riding time? Hogwash. You know, that's what I think about when I think about national titles. And I know you don't like that, but that's what comes to my mind. You know, you could have done a lot better.
You got 4 Big Ten wall charts. You got 2 NCAA wall charts. Where are they?
They're in my parents used to live in Cedar Rapids here, and my dad, when I was going through high school, he was a very good carpenter, and our basement at the time was just a cement basement with cement pillars and stuff, but he refinished the whole basement by himself and all that, and at the time, you know, put up paneling and all that or whatever, and he made kind of a shrine for both my brothers and I's important wall charts. I won 2 state titles. Both of my brothers each won a state title, so all those state title brackets are hanging on the wall down there in the basement. And then he made kind of like a separate room off to the side for like my Big Tens and my nationals, and then all the plaques and awards and all that kind of stuff that I got. And then my brother now, my younger brother, actually lives in that house now. So I'm assuming, I think they're still down there in that basement. The one thing I did take is at one time I went over there and I grabbed my Dan Hodge Award, and my dad handmade a really cool kind of like pedestal to put it on. And so I took that to my house just recently in the last year or two, and took that out of the basement and took that to my house and put that down there. But the wall charts and stuff are all still over at now my brother's house.
Be as specific as you can on this next question, Mark.
Okay.
What separates good from great?
From a wrestling standpoint, what I'm thinking, I don't know if this is the answer you're really looking for, but I think for me anyways, is from a being a good wrestler to a great wrestler, for me, is what set me over the top and put me over the top. And it's funny that I just talked about this, how much riding time I had in the finals my junior and senior years. But what allowed me to be a good wrestler, or go from a good wrestler to a great wrestler from the sport of wrestling, was learning the top position. I mean, everybody starts wrestling on their feet, okay? Everybody. And that's where you start the match at. So that's where you focus the majority of your time. And next comes the bottom, because if you can't get out, you can't score any points. So you have to be able to get out from the bottom. So everybody then focuses on the bottom. The top position is usually the last area that people focus on. But I think if they can master that top position, and not just riding to get riding time, but literally trying to ride to physically break someone down to the mat, turn them over, and pin them, and do what the most dominating thing in the sport of wrestling is, which is really, in my opinion, gone to the wayside, is actually to pin your opponent. If you can learn how to do that, you're going to become a great wrestler. You don't see near the amount of pins these days as what you used to years ago, because the focus isn't there anymore on pins. People do not focus on headhunting. People do not focus on whip overs and taking guys to their backs. It's just about getting that riding time point and focusing just more on the feet type of wrestling. And I wish that they would focus more on that top position. And especially now, since you get so much for near falls. You know, they're trying to make it like that, and the thing is, now we're just wrestling for near falls, but we're not really wrestling to pin someone. So I don't know if that's what the answer is looking for. But
great stuff. You've been in this sport for so long. I know you've done a ton of interviews. I love to listen to you talk wrestling. What's something you've never told anybody about your wrestling career? I want to be the first guy to learn something about you that nobody's ever heard. It could be something so mild, like something completely, maybe it's somewhat irrelevant. I want to be, you've had probably hundreds of interviews. I want you to tell me something that you've never told anybody else, whatever it might be.
I don't know. I really, really don't know. It'd probably be a training thing that I would do or did or something like that, you know.
What did you do?
I used to do a lot of things, training wise, you know, that was just kind of like off the wall different, you know, especially when I was younger to try and think I was getting an edge. But I remember, I don't think I've ever probably told anybody this in an interview that I know of, but I had a route back home. It was 4.5 miles, and I would run it on a regular, consistent basis. And it was summertime, and I was, you know, getting my weight down for like probably cadet nationals or junior nationals or something like that. And I just was always looking for ways to push myself. And I mean, I could run this route in a decent time and I would like just go out and run, but I wanted to get bored of running a little bit. So I wanted to step it up a little bit. So I went out and I got my mom actually from, I don't know, doing her aerobics and exercise and stuff that my mom was always working out and she still does to this day. She's 70 years old. I mean, my mom is just absolutely, she's amazing. She was out shoveling snow and 15 degree below zero temperatures for 2 hours straight the other day, and icicles hanging off her face and everything else. And I had to force her to finally go inside. And I'll take the rest from here. But she had these ankle weights, and they're like, I think 4 or 5 pound ankle weights. They had weights in like, you know, bead or like, I don't know, like just, and they velcroed around your ankle, you know. So I put those on and it was a really hot day. It was really, really hot out. I mean, like, you know, Iowa humidity and summertime and stuff. And I wanted to go run this route. But sometimes if I didn't have the time, I just needed a real quick workout, I could run it as like a 3-mile route. It'd take 1.5 miles off, but I had to run on railroad tracks for probably like 3/4 of a mile at least. And on the railroad track route, I had to take the tracks over a big creek, which is called Prairie Creek. So when you're taking the tracks over the creek, you look down between the tracks and there's air there. There's like nothing there. So if you get off on one of those railroad ties, you're going down. And anyway, I thought, I was like, you know what? Let's be tough today. Let's put these ankle weights on, these 5-pound ankle weights, and go for a run. Well, I get into this run and I'm just like, it's hot out. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make the whole 4.5 miles. This is more than I bargained for, you know? So I'm like, I'm going to take the railroad track route and cut it down a little bit. But that was worse than the other route because the railroad tracks, it's not like you're just running on concrete. It's like, you know, you're really having to keep your balance and pay attention to every step and what you're doing or whatever. But I just remember coming home that day and coming through the backyard because it used to take the road up and then I'd always come through the backyard or whatever. And I was just absolutely exhausted and dead, and my legs, I just couldn't even feel my legs. But it's just one of those things, you don't stop. You just don't stop until you're done. And I remember that was like the only time that I got home and my dad was outside too. And he didn't know I'd gone and done that or nothing. And he just looked at me like, what in the heck are you doing, boy? But I was dead. I was beat. I don't know. That's, you know, that's just some stuff like that I would just do. I would find ways to try and push myself and do things that nobody would ever do or nobody knows about, and get up in the mornings and I'd have a paper route. And I've talked about this before, but I have a paper route that I had for 7 years to deliver in the Cedar Rapids Gazette. But I would get up and it'd be wintertime out, you know, snowing, raging blizzard. I'd have to put coveralls on and stocking caps, and I'd go run that 4.5 mile route and all that, and boots. Or I'd go over to a big old hill, Jones Park Hill, and all the snow, and run the hills. And then from there, I'd go into the school and I'd get my lift in, you know. And I think just things like that, you know, would just help prepare yourself mentally to where if you get in tough wrestling matches or you get behind a little bit, hey, no big deal. You know, you just keep pushing on, you keep pushing forward. And, you know, like Terry says, or you get what you earn, and you earned it, you're going to get it.
I do not disagree with you that maybe you could have scored some more takedowns on your feet, but I love mat wrestling. So 3-4 minutes of riding time. I mean, I can appreciate aspects of that. So final thing we're going to do, Mark, I call this the mat return segment. Okay. So I'm gonna little rapid fire. You're gonna try to work up. I'm gonna mat return you. I'm gonna mat return you. And I'm not letting you go. I'm not letting you. I'll drop down take that 5-second stall call. I got good awareness. I got one to give. I know where I'm at on this mat. Okay. So this is called mat returns with Mark Ironside. Mark, what's your favorite movie all time?
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie.
Favorite movie? Holy smokes, you're killing me, dude. Rocky IV.
Great movie. Great movie. Phenomenal soundtrack. I think
I used to watch that, work out to that soundtrack all the time.
That soundtrack is still fantastic. I think Apollo Creed, Carl Weathers, I think he just turned 76 like within the last couple of days. Okay. Favorite sports team? You got a favorite sports team?
I don't really follow football too much. Obviously, I would say Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa Hawkeyes, anything, but in pro, big Cubs fan. Big Cubs fan. 2016, what a remarkable year.
It was a great year for the Cubs. Favorites? Musical group?
Group? I don't know. I don't really have a group. I listen to all kinds of different music, all the way from obviously Johnny Cash and Don Williams. I love Don Williams, to Waylon Jennings, to Eminem. I love some Eminem, I just I don't really get into a lot of the new stuff like right now. I love Ned Ledoux is one of my all-time favorites. And then Cody Johnson right now. I love Cody Johnson. So I don't really have a favorite group, I guess. If I had to guess one, maybe I'd say the Oak Ridge Boys.
Okay. If you could change places with one person for one day, who do you want to be for a day?
My mind goes to elk hunting. Like who would I want to be an elk hunter for one day? I don't know, but like who would I want to be for one day? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have anybody. I'm happy.
You go with some race car driver. That was my.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be really cool. If I could trade places with one person one day, even though he's gone from us right now, I would say Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Okay. You might have answered this before with the paper out. First job?
No, actually, yeah, paper route was the first job. I was either thinking that or working at the service station up the street doing oil changes and tire changes.
What is your favorite amusement park ride?
Hate them all.
And Mark, I thought, I'm like, I got a feeling he doesn't like rides.
I hate them all. I will puke all over whoever's sitting next to me. I cannot do it. Not even a Ferris wheel. Don't even try.
You have a superstition. Any superstitions when you were wrestling?
No, not really. The only thing I did do is I had practice shoes. I'd go through 2 or 3 sets of shoes a year for practice. But at the beginning of the season, I would get one pair of shoes that I would use for competition only. And so when I brought those pair of shoes, I usually broke them in for like a week's worth in the room before I wore them for the first time. But then those were my competition shoes. So I knew when I put those shoes on, it meant business type of thing. So, but as far as anything else, I didn't really have a lot of superstitions. I did get a sweatshirt handed down to me that Terry Brands handed down to me after he was done competing, and I came in there. It was a gold sweatshirt. It was a champion gold reverse weave sweatshirt, all beat up, holy, sleeves cut off of it. And I wore that through my career. And then once I was done, I handed it down to Doug Schwab.
Getting to be short time, final 20 seconds. Okay. Or, as far as wrestling terms go, in life, Mark, what is your biggest pet peeve? I mean, what is something that can take Ironside 0 to 60 like that?
Arrogance and laziness.
One thing you would change about yourself?
Learn to handle losing better.
What's tops on your bucket list?
I don't really know. I got a lot of different things, but I've just to keep elk hunting. I love the mountains, just being in the mountains every chance I get. I wouldn't mind seeing kind of crazy it is, but going to some beaches and seeing some different scenery and beaches. I love the mountains, but it would be nice to see some beaches and go and relax on the beach sometime and just suck in the sun and some sunsets that way as well too. I think it just peace and tranquility and just being alone in certain situations and just being able to absorb it and not having to be places and do things, probably more so.
Final question for you. You are going on a cross-country trip driving. You get to pick 3 people, dead or alive, you've never met. Last question, Mark. It's a hard hand fight. Last question. 3
For sure,
people
Dale
you've never
Earnhardt
met.
Sr. For
Who's
sure,
that?
Dale Earnhardt Sr. for
Okay.
sure. He's one of them for sure. I would like to bring my dad along.
You've met your dad.
Huh?
It's got to be people you've never met.
Never met. I think Johnny Cash would be a fun one. And then Dale Earnhardt Sr. And then who else? Abraham Lincoln.
There you go. There you go. Period comes to an end. Matt returned, I think, 11 times, finished the period on top, but it was a good battle. Mark, I can't thank you enough. I love listening to your wrestling knowledge, your stories, your passion. You are so good for this sport. Iowa fans are so lucky to get to listen to you guys, and I just really appreciate the time. This has been a fantastic hour of talking wrestling. Thank you so much.
Well, you definitely asked a lot of questions I've never been asked before. So you put me on the spot, and it's hard to think of that stuff like that. So hopefully we answered them and people found a little about me that they would never know before. So Shane, thanks for all you do too. Keep up the awesome work. I know you worked really, really hard at it, and I enjoy listening to you as well on the TV and the broadcast when I get a chance to, but it's always good to see you at the events all the time as well too. So you guys do an awesome job.
We'll talk soon. Thanks again.
All right. See you, buddy.